This week in the business of tech, NATO ups their warfare game, the chip shortage, norms and standards on cybersecurity, Microsoft's cloud PC, and it's a big deal, Apple extorted cloud spending data, and the DOJ moves on ransomware. Hit that like and subscribe, and let's dive right in. Researchers at cybersecurity company FireEye Mandiant analyzed hundreds of cyber incidents and found that the global median dwell time, the duration between the start of a security intrusion and when it's identified, has dropped to below a month for the first time, standing at 24 days. According to the M-Trends 2021 Annual Threat Report, that means incidents are being identified twice as quickly as they were last year, when the average dwell time was 56 days. And that's much more quickly than they were a decade ago, when it often took over a year for organizations to realize that cybercriminals had infiltrated the network. That story is from ZDNet. Then again, there's possibly more weaknesses out there. Now a new set of 9 such vulnerabilities are exposing an estimated 100 million devices worldwide, including an array of Internet of Things products and IT management servers. Dubbed NameWreck, the newly disclosed flaws are in 4 ubiquitous TCP/IP stacks, code that integrates network communication protocols to establish connections between devices and the internet. So, how about some context for that? Malwarebytes has published data about SMB customers. 56% of U.S. businesses with 50 to 999 employees either somewhat or strongly concur that it's not a matter of if, but when they will suffer a successful cyber attack. Yet even so, fully 91% of those same organizations say they're either satisfied or completely satisfied with their endpoint protection solution, and an even greater 95% say they trust their current endpoint protection provider. Mark Strassman, Chief Product Officer, says expectations are low, and I don't think they need to be. Cisco, however, thinks SMBs are outperforming. That's what the press release says, although my take on the data says they're in line with enterprise and mid-market. Link to that research data in the show notes. Now, why do we care? We're finding things faster, the risk profile is increasing, and customer expectations are low. Strassman is right in that expectations don't need to be low. That said, I think that's missing the larger lack of trust problem technology has in general. Let's observe that generally, customers are going to be inclined to trust their purchase solutions because buyers don't want to be wrong here. They paid money, and so they believe in the solution. Trust is the resource to consider here. Make sure you have it and to nurture it. NATO has conducted its first war game exercise that includes cyber risk, per the Wall Street Journal. The war game includes scenarios exploring how widespread attacks on a fictional nation's infrastructure might strike at activities critical to keeping the global financial system functioning, such as payments and settlement operations. The key difference is the inclusion of how banks and other financial institutions might respond to a physical and cyber conflict. Now, why do we care? When first NATO changed their definition of conflict to include cyber, I would cite that as a change in perception of security. This is one more step. Factoring in the impact of cyber incursions and attacks on civilian infrastructure is just continuing that. Take your tip from NATO. Include cyber in all your business planning, particularly ensuring continuity planning. The global semiconductor shortage hammering the auto industry and other manufacturers is going to take, quote, a couple of years to abate as demand soars among limited manufacturing capacity, the chief executive of chip-making giant Intel said. That's from the Washington Post. NVIDIA joined the chorus, thinking it will be mostly this year, and TSMC is citing things improving in 2023. Now, why do we care? Savvy IT services companies are going to be compensating for this over the next 12 to 24 months in their planning with their customers. Your projects may well be delayed. Are you prepared for that? The hybrid work discussions continue, and the argument that hybrid work is here to stay may not play out, says Tech Isle. 58% of employees within the U.S. SMB and mid-market firms expect to work from home at least till the end of 2021, in sharp contrast to pre-pandemic in 2019, when 29% of small business employees, 9% of employees within mid-market firms, and 7% within upper mid-market firms who work from home. However, the work-from-home trend may not play out in the longer term. Encouraged by the increasing rate of vaccinations and economic recovery, 61% to 67% of firms plan to bring back all employees to the office by early 2022. Only 22% are planning for a phased or staggered approach to reopening offices as soon as it's safe to do so. Higher employee-sized businesses are likely to be more aggressive in their reopening plans than the smaller businesses. 11% of firms will most likely permanently adopt an approach allowing for some of their employees to work from home indefinitely. Overall, 97% of mainstream businesses, 1 to 5,000 employees, feel unprepared to having a long-term remote and hybrid workforce work environment. Between 17 and 44% of small businesses to upper mid-market firms' IT staff are challenged in identifying and deploying hybrid workplace solutions. Now, what does research from WebRoot say? When surveyed, 46% said that remote working was rolled out a bit faster pace than they would have liked. A combination of device sharing, the distraction that comes from working from home, and the need for swift cloud migration has resulted in security dilemmas that many SMBs do not have the resources to tackle alone. This is creating an environment for cybercriminals to flourish. 61% of participants believe that risks to their organizations have increased either moderately or severely as a result of remote working, with an additional 31% reporting a marginal increase in risk. 32% said that they struggle to access their endpoint monitoring system remotely, with just 38% having implemented a zero-trust security model. Now, why do we care? I asked this last week, and I'll say it again. The confirmation is not enough about the why. Why are companies going back? Why would they stay remote? Why would they go hybrid? You have the opportunity to design any kind of business operations you want. What would you design? And why? Answer that question for your business and for your customers, and you will outperform. Let's talk broadband. Washington State should be signing a bill into law to allow direct-to-consumer broadband. The governor has indicated he expects to sign it when it passes. New York State has signed a bill requiring all ISPs operating in New York to offer a $15 a month package for low-income consumers. The state has also offered a website to help people find affordable internet in their area. On the wireless side, the FCC is reestablishing an advisory group to make recommendations on 5G security. They're bringing back the Communications Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council by the end of June for 2 years. This due to the SolarWinds breach. Now, why do we care? So the FCC is re-engaging and the states are passing laws. This is another point on our journey about both regulation and broadband as a utility. That's the context of why we care. ISG is reporting on the state of the European IT and business services market. It's up 20% year on year, citing managed services and cloud services growth. Boston Consulting thinks outsourcing is increasingly part of the solutions, but just in some new ways. 79% of respondents said that they asked their service providers for help in some form, such as longer payment terms, 47%, price reductions, 45%, or free support for more processes or additional services at 41%. Gartner researchers say it's continued growth, 4.4% growth in 2021, which is compared with a previous reduction in spend. Now, why do we care? That data about the pressures on the provider is what interested me. It's easy to see the positive growth data and assume all is well. It wasn't easy, and let's not get out over our skis going forward. Caution doesn't mean holding back, it means planning for the pressure. Reactions have come in from the foreign policy experts to last week's move by the Biden administration for punishing Russia over the SolarWinds attack. As covered in the Wall Street Journal, this is a significant change with previous foreign policy that has tolerated cyber espionage. Administration officials deemed this hack beyond the boundaries of acceptable cyber operations because of the scope and scale. In that vein, Senator Mark Warner has called for coordination between the EU and the US over common cybersecurity standards. I increasingly believe that our failure to have any kinds of joint cybersecurity policies or even joint cybersecurity norms could be something that could be potentially devastating, the senator said. The White House is closing its coordinating groups for the SolarWinds and Exchange hacking campaigns, as announced on Monday. This is a signal of a return to normalcy. Also released, a NSA CISA FBI advisory that details the tradecraft and the CISA malware analysis report. The NSA CISA FBI advisory centralizes information about vulnerabilities the SVR is known to have exploited and provides recommendations regarding potential mitigation actions that entities can take. The malware analysis report provides a more granular assessment of the tools the SVR used in the SolarWinds compromise, including detailed analysis of 18 files associated with the compromise. Now, why do we care? Norms and standards about cyber are changing at a nation-state level. Yesterday, we covered the NATO war games, and here you see more. Politicians calling for coordination and changes in policy. We care because the policy is a portion of regulation, which is going to influence how we all operate in the cyber realm. Tactically, we can mark the end of the incidents from a governmental management perspective, and we have that full report for engineers to dig into to understand how the breach happened. You have your homework. While we're on the security beat, insurance company Geico suffered a breach that lasted more than a month. The company filed with the Attorney General of California in a data breach notice. The breach exposed customers' driver's licenses. Hundreds of networks have been hacked in a breach of CodeCov, an online software testing platform. The company suffered a supply chain attack that went undetected for over 2 months. The attackers silently collected customers' credentials. Now, why do we care? CodeCov is a huge breach too, right at the supply chain. Geico is likely the one to get the coverage, and likely with no real consequences. Will they suffer long term? I highly doubt it. I paired these two to show the difference in the way coverage happens. CodeCov should get more coverage, but Geico will get the headline. The British government has ordered an investigation of NVIDIA's proposed acquisition of ARM. The government will ensure the national security implications are being explored prior to the deal being cleared. This after the previous investigation on competition grounds was announced, and this is also on top of the concerns raised by companies such as Qualcomm, Apple, and Samsung over how ARM licenses its designs. Now, why do we care? So you have competitive concerns, licensing concerns, and now national security concerns. Let's see if this happens. It feels a bit less likely now, at least without concessions to the UK government. ARM-based chips matter a lot right now, with the Apple M1 changing chip design. Let's see how this one plays out. Want to ask, why do we care? T-shirts, stickers, water bottles, and even aprons. Pick up some of our great stuff at the link in the description below and support the show directly. ZDNet is reporting that Microsoft's Cloud PC may be launching in just a few months, this summer. The core service, as reported by Mary Jo Foley previously, is, quote, an Azure-powered service that will enable customers to use their own devices as thin clients that can access a remote Windows desktop and use software like Microsoft Office. Microsoft plans to sell Cloud PC as a managed Microsoft 365 experience at a flat per-user price. This is an important difference to existing Windows Virtual Desktop prices, which revolves around Azure consumption, end quote. She continues with a highlighting of a recent job listing. Quote, the Cloud PC service allows all users to be productive from anywhere, on any device, with a cloud-powered, secure, and always up-to-date Windows experience. It also seamlessly allows endpoint managers to instantly provision cloud-hosted PCs and manage physical and virtual devices through a unified portal and a fixed and predictable price, end quote. So why do we care? I think this is a huge deal for smaller IT services companies. A flat fee per user price desktop in the cloud would be a significant game changer. Note the always up-to-date statement in the job listing. That implies fully managed. You can't tell me there aren't customers for whom this would be their preferred way to run. Sure, it's not announced, but it's looking more likely. I talk often about if I was starting an MSP today, if I was starting today, I'd sell this. SonicWall is reporting a breach in their devices as 3 zero-day vulnerabilities have been announced. At least one has been exploited in the wild. The company has published fixes for the issue and urged customers to upgrade immediately. Meanwhile, and unrelated, the Revil ransomware gang is attempting to extort Apple. They want Apple to buy back stolen product blueprints and have set a date of May 1 to pay the ransom. The announcement was timed for Apple's Spring Loaded event. The gang has targeted Apple after Quintana Computer, an Apple business partner, refused to communicate with the gang. The gang reportedly accessed the plans via a breach of Quintana. And in escalating size, FireEye has indicated that Chinese hackers are believed to have compromised dozens of U.S. government agencies, financial institutions, and defense contractors. This investigation is still in the early stages, as reported by the Washington Post. Finally, just in case you thought it was all totally over, there are 2 more malware variants tied to the SolarWinds Orion breach. The alert indicates that Russian-backed attackers were focusing on 5 known vulnerabilities. Now, why do we care? Extortionware is my interest here. Rather than just ransom, the threat to release confidential data from Apple is downright scary. Now imagine your customer, or you, on the end of that threat. All it will take is the criminals systemizing that process, and they have long since proven themselves capable of that. It's why I care so much about the norms that are changing. As government is changing their approach, that's a key development. Gartner released new data on public cloud spending. It'll grow 23.1% in 2021, and spending on SaaS will remain the largest market segment. Infrastructure as a service and desktop as a service offerings are predicted to grow the most this year. DaaS is expected to grow 67.7% to $2 billion, while IaaS grows 38.5% this year. Now, why do we care? Couple that with the first story today, particularly the SMB, you can easily see the combination of SaaS plus fully managed cloud PCs being the way of the future for small companies. We're charting that conversion. Time for another regulation roundup. The Department of Justice has formed a task force specifically focused on ransomware. The group focuses on training, improved intelligence across the department, and work to identify links between criminal actors and nation-states. In the UK, smartphones will be included in the scope of a security by design law focused on consumer devices. This coming law focused initially on IoT devices and builds on a code of practice for IoT device manufacturers from 2018. Now, the plan covers essentially all smart devices. PCs and tablets without cellular connections are not covered. In the EU, officials have proposed a new set of regulations around high-risk uses of artificial intelligence. The rules prohibit remote biometric identification for uses like surveilling crowds, define a list of those high-risk uses, and lay out fines for companies that break the rules. This proposal would move through the process and likely will take years. Now, why do we care? These are each a bit different, and I'm presenting in order of impact and timeliness. I previously said that we can't expect different results without more investment from law enforcement. The formation of a dedicated task force by the DOJ is a specific focus. There are now resources collecting information on ransomware and finding the links between organizations. We can hope that effort against the systematic criminal organization helps improve things. The UK's set of laws is interesting as it's another round of specific basics. It includes banning default passwords, points of contact to report vulnerabilities, and upfront notification of how long security updates are to be delivered. The basics get covered. Again, this now hopes that the basics get covered. The EU laws are a lot more forward-looking and certainly show regulators' interest in privacy. The EU has certainly led here, and many are saying this could be the GDPR of artificial intelligence. GDPR was hugely impactful, so even if it's taking years, this debate will impact product design. Here's some research you can leverage and teach customers. Microsoft has done research on back-to-back virtual meetings. Turns out, yes, it does make you more stressed and distracted. The cure for meeting fatigue, however, is straightforward. Take breaks. Taking breaks between meetings allows the brain to reset, focus, and engage. In response, the company added a feature to Outlook to encourage shorter meetings and take breaks, and the default settings on Microsoft Teams now start meetings 5 minutes after the hour. Why do we care? This is a very specific set of recommendations and a perfect example of what I mean when I talk about business value. The features Microsoft has added are most effective if users are trained on not only how to use them, but the why. Companies that use the why to build a culture where this is not only accepted but embraced are the ones that get the benefits. Changing behavior requires that investment. Those that take advantage of that get the benefits of less stressed and more focused employees, but it doesn't just happen. Want to bring that extra value? Help customers and your own organization leverage this information. I absolutely redid my own booking settings to adjust. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.